let us all do we can to build a better future. So let's get started with our first segment. So we're still dealing with this pandemic, and a lot of people are right now suffering from it, and this is still a global crisis, a global health issue. And if we don't step up right now, I dread to think about the variations of the coronavirus that could eventually get out of hand. And we have to get this vaccine out there to a lot of people. I understand there's a lot of people that are hesitant and don't want to get vaccinated. I get it. There's no way I'm going to get an argument back and forth. The point is, the sad fact is, in the United States right now, we are holding on to a lot of the vaccinations. A lot of these private corporations are holding on to it. And there's a video that recently came out. I think we all know who this individual is. His name's Andy Barkan. This is the same individual who was with the Bernie Sanders campaign. And when that fizzled out in 2020, he had that infamous video interview with Joe Biden where he said he was for Medicare for all, and Biden said, I'm not for it at all. But now here's a reminder of a promise that Biden made in that video. Let's play it in its full entirety, please.
Dear President Biden, I want to remind you of a promise you made to me and to the American people. If the U.S. discovers a vaccine first, will you commit to sharing that technology with other countries? And will you ensure there are no patents to stand in the way of other countries and companies mass producing those life-saving vaccines?
Absolutely, positively. This is the only humane thing in the world to do.
Mr. President, you and I are both safe from this deadly pandemic because we could get the vaccine. And we will stay safe if you reverse Trump's inhumane policies and we vaccinate the entire world. That is the only way that we can prevent the development of vaccine-resistant coronavirus variants. But billions of families around the world aren't as lucky as you and me.
India's being engulfed by this virus, and its people are utterly helpless.
Coming. Mass cremations and funeral pyres now lighting the
India
streets.
has set a global record for daily infections and
Indians
deaths.
are being abandoned in the teeth of a deadly disease. Only around 2% of Indians are fully inoculated.
If any American leader of our lifetime has understood the value of a single life, and the deep pain of loss, it is you. But you also know the beauty of salvation. You know the joys that life can bring. When I asked you last year if you would change the global rules for vaccines, you did not hesitate, equivocate, or mince your words.
The answer is yes. Yes, yes, yes. And it's not only a good thing to do, it's overwhelmingly in our interest to do it as well.
May 5th will be your moment, America's moment, to steer us down a more just and humane path. Governments from around the globe will gather at the World Trade Organization. They will ask America to waive the rules that are blocking them from making enough vaccines to protect their people. In this pandemic, millions of families around the world are grieving because of one stray cough, one brief mistake, one unfortunate moment. American innovation has delivered health and safety to the people of this country. But billions of people have been excluded. Their dreams are no less real than ours. Their love is no less strong, their lives are no less worthy. But because they live somewhere else, because they have less money, because the international laws are unfair, and because the pharmaceutical companies are so greedy, millions more people may die of this disease. You know that this is wrong. You know it in the marrow of your bones. In a few days, at the WTO meeting, all eyes will be on America. We will decide the answer to the world's plea. What kind of leadership will we display? The answer, Mr. President, is up to you.
All right.
So
Dan.
I just want to say two things on this. So first, ironically, Trump is to thank for us having the abundance of vaccine right now. A lot of people said he was insane to say that they would have that done at the beginning of this year, and we were shocked too, but it did happen that way, which means Joe Biden's only real choice that he will be able to make is whether or not he shares this with the rest of the world, because he cannot say that he is responsible for doing what is already and had already been set in motion. And I think that we talked about this before because I've been following what's been happening with India and how they're doing. I really think that what's happening in India is the real proper way to understand the severity of the virus because they don't have oxygen. And I remember when this was first happening and the hospitals were getting flooded here in the U.S., the two things that they were the most worried about were oxygen running out and ventilators running out. And we know we ran out of ventilators because of misallocation and a whole bunch of other things. But we didn't run out of oxygen. And because it does, we covered that story a number of months ago where the biggest effect of corona is that it just like it destroys a lot of your lung tissue, causes a lot of scarring. And people, when they're really dealing with this, especially just need nearly pure oxygen to handle going through this. And India doesn't have access to pure oxygen. And I like the reason I said that it's a more accurate case than the U.S. is, the question I ask is, how would this affect the human body if it just happened and, you know, we were in sort of a medieval level? Like how, if bubonic plague happened today, it would not be even close to as deadly as it was back then. So what would corona look like back then? And I think we're seeing that in India. And I think, the way I said before, that we're a little spoiled, even as terrible as our healthcare system is, that we live in an era where we can give people oxygen. Because if we didn't live in this era, this would not be as much of a pushover as it is.
Look, here's the thing. I'm seeing a lot of people in live stream chat just calling out Biden and his administration. Because, again, his administration has delivered little and has fallen through with their promises. They haven't given us anything that they promised on the campaign trail. And who knows what happens at the WTO. Maybe Biden has a change of heart, but I'm not believing it until I see it with my own two eyes. Until I hear it, that Biden says he's going to make the vaccine available for everyone. And the thing is, at this point, we're seeing the greed of corporations, the greed of the top 1%. It's the billionaires that control our politicians. Yeah. So if the billionaires give Biden the thumbs up, our ever so generous, benevolent overlords decide to tell Biden, the president of the United States, that it's okay to make the vaccine free, then fine, he'll say it. But everyone prepared to be shocked to see Biden's polite way of telling other countries, no, you're going to have to pay us. And the vote blue no matter who crowd is going to be quiet. They're going to be silent because, again, he's pragmatic and he's not Trump. He's not tweeting out mean things to ruin their brunches because, again, you know, let's face it. If there really is going to be a real progressive movement, people would be out there in the streets. People would be holding town halls, events, doing something to really hold this administration accountable for its promises that it never followed through on. So I want the international community to know, if the Biden administration and the Democratic establishment are more than willing to say, oh, well, we can't deliver this, we can't do that to the American people, they'll give a middle finger to the international community the same way that the GOP will too. So see, there we go. I threw in the Republican Party. Yeah. See, the thing is, you know, George Carlin brought up this great point. It's one big club and you ain't in it. But there's another quote, too. The reason why our government is so screwed up at this point is because of the silent, obedient consent of the people. So long as the people say that this is okay and that our government can treat us like crap and our government can treat other people like crap, nothing will fundamentally change. Joe Biden's been in politics for 40-plus years. Not once has he been voted out because that's a name people knew. They were comfortable with it. Yeah, we might have a democracy. We might have a republic. But see, the thing is, we have dynastic families controlling us. We have an oligarchy. We've perfected neo-feudalism at this point. So the thing is, if we want change, it's up to the people to wake up and no longer defend people that made you feel comfortable. These politicians don't deserve to be put on a pedestal. And while that video, that 3-minute video is on point, I agree with everything that was said in there. I don't think it's going to happen, buddy. And remember that interview that you had with Biden where he said flat out, I don't believe in Medicare for all. During the early days of 2020, during the pandemic era. And mind you, we're still in the pandemic. We haven't beaten this thing yet. And yeah, you get vaccinated, but there's been reports of people getting COVID-19 even if they've been vaccinated. This is going to be a long uphill fight that I think the whole world isn't really fully aware of just how dangerous this thing could be. Because at a flip of a second, according to Daniel, look, I mean, we've talked about this before, about a worst case scenario of the virus, of some form of mutation, that if it truly becomes something deadly, globally, the world is not prepared for it. I hope that Biden does have a change of heart, maybe during the WTO. But seeing how he's been such a manipulative, heartless person, he doesn't value life. He voted for the war in Iraq. He proudly prostituted himself to corporations and made the credit card corporations what they are today too. Student debt. I mean, if he cared for life, he wouldn't have made people's lives so horrible here. Daniel.
Yeah, it's not a fun position to be in for any of this, because I think the big thing I'm most worried about, and India's sort of got me to think about this a little bit differently, because it's reminded me, right, when you don't have even a really terrible healthcare system set up that has oxygen, you're going to be in worse shape. But the thing that I'm still worried about is, if you're in a developed country, this is not that scary of a thing. I mean, for a pandemic, but we don't want enough people to be infected so that lottery winner who has that mutation that makes this thing actually very worrisome happens. It's just best to deal with the pandemic. And as I've said already, last year, we already failed. We're just trying to see if we can properly clean up our mess.
The reason why I shared that video is because I think it's important to understand that the video I agree with everything that was said in it. It's just, I think a lot of people need to wake up to the fact that somebody like Biden, don't make him out to be your friendly grandpa. He's a corrupt neoliberal Democrat. He's implemented neoliberal policies and has been on the wrong side of history. So if that offends K-Hive or Vote Blue, no matter who people, or even AOC as she defends him, like the squad does, like they always do, just know this, he doesn't care. If he cared, he wouldn't have done all those crappy things that he did in his 40-plus years of politics. And I know some of you might say, well, he might change. Really? You think somebody like that will change? He doesn't even know where he's at half the time. Let's be real here. Nothing's going to fundamentally change unless people step up and stop begging these politicians to do the right thing.